Howdy, y'all. Don't mind me, I'm just practicing my American accent in case we become the 51st state. All joking aside, welcome back to Live at Lunch. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm Lambros Demos, and boy, um, what a crazy time to be living in right now. Um, so much to talk about. Tariffs are on everyone's mind. We also have the inflation report that came out and the subsequent interest rate cut that happened last month in January. And of course, today, the Toronto Regional Real Estate Board released their housing stats. So lots to talk about, and I'm going to try and touch on everything as we go along here. But as always, if you have any questions, I'm doing this for you, so please ask your questions here, and I can answer them while I'm live. I'm sure a lot of you have questions on your mind, and it's good to talk about it. If you're watching this on the replay, by all means, you can still ask your question, and then I'll get back to you ASAP. If you'd rather send me a DM, by all means, send me a DM, and I will get to you as soon as possible. So I did have a ton of questions come in, most of them regarding what's happening with the real estate market and how these supposed tariffs, are supposed to affect the market. Because people had plans to buy or sell this year, and they're concerned that things may go a little crazy. So obviously, I don't have a crystal ball, and no one knows what's going to happen. And then obviously, when you're dealing with somebody like the U.S. president right now, who's so unpredictable as to what his next move is going to be, and just says whatever is on his mind at that moment without thinking about it, and then doesn't want to be caught in a lie or in an exaggeration, so he tends to double down on things, right? Which just makes it worse and worse and worse and worse. So, it's just crazy what's happening at the moment here. But let's start with the interest rate cut that happened last month. And Tiff Macklem, the head of the Bank of Canada, who I have to admit, I didn't care for him too much when he first started when I first started watching these press conferences, and he was announcing interest rate interest rate hikes, obviously. But now I kind of understand the difficulty in his position, and I've come to respect him more because he's got a very difficult job. Very difficult job, because, I mean, as I just mentioned, all of us here don't know what the next move is going to be. We have no idea what's happening, but he's the one that actually has to carve out a path for the nation's economy, right? So, very difficult position, and I don't envy it at all. He can only deal with the data that he has in front of him, right? And when I say him, I mean him and his whole entourage there, the Bank of Canada, but they filter through Tiff, obviously. And a lot of people think that the Bank of Canada is, one-on-one with the federal government, but that's not the case, because those are two separate entities, right? So the federal government has no say in what the Bank of Canada is going to do, and the Bank of Canada has no say in what the federal government's going to do, right? So you can't just say, federal government, this and that, and point fingers at the Bank of Canada, because, like I said, they're two separate entities. So Tiff, he's like anyone else when he has no control of the federal government, and he has to decide, cut rates or raise rates or hold, pat. And then you've got, our nation's capital is throwing things at him as well, not him directly, but at the country. Then he's got to deal with that, right? So they may do their best to carve out a plan and say, okay, we're going to do this, but then the federal government throws them a wrench and say, okay, no, we have to change direction, switch courses, and etc. And then you've got external factors like what's happening in the USA right now and threats of tariffs and all this nonsense, then he's got to deal with that, right? So they can only do, and Tiff can only do what's in front of them right at the moment, right, and deal with that. So they put out their monetary policy based on the data that they have at the moment. And they decided to cut interest rates again in January. Good news for all those with lines of credit and variable rate mortgages. And I think the plan was to cut rates at least a couple more times this year. So I maybe get it down to a 2.5% key policy rate. And just a reminder for people, that policy rate then you have to add 2.2% to that policy rate in order to get the prime rate. And then most mortgages and lines of credit are based on prime, right? So right now the policy rate sits at 3%. You add 2.2 to that, we're at 5.2%. That's the prime rate currently. And then, if you have a line of credit, for example, it could be prime plus a half. So you're looking at 5.7% for your line of credit. You may get a mortgage at prime minus a half, or maybe prime minus one if you're lucky. So that's what it's based on, right? So I think the objective was to get it down to 2.5% later this year. The policy rate I'm talking about, which would bring prime to about 3.2%. But now, with all this nonsense going on with the USA and tariffs and all these things, we don't know what's going to happen. We have a reprieve, so to speak. I bet everybody was biting their fingernails on February 3rd, trying to see if the tariffs were going to kick in at midnight. And now we've got a 30-day pause, I guess. But what's going to happen in the next 30 to 45 days, right? Are we going to get another extension? Or is the president going to make good on his threats, tariffs? Is our prime minister going to make good on his retaliatory tariffs? No one knows which direction this could go. And if worst case scenario, this does happen, it could be devastating for the economy. So while I'm still talking about the Bank of Canada and interest rate cuts, they're going to be in an awkward position, because if the economy does crumble, so to speak, and we're into a recession, we see high unemployment, we see GDP go down, etc. And at the same time, prices go up because of the tariffs. Now you're stuck between a rock and a hard place, because usually they raise interest rates when price goes up, inflation, but they can't do that now because the economy is suffering and people are suffering. So if they're struggling and they're losing their jobs, then how can you hammer them over the head with more interest rate hikes? So I think at that point they have to weigh which is the worst thing that's happening. Is it the prices going up? Or is it the economy crumbling? And they're going to decide what to do at that point. And if it does happen to be the economy, then you'll see more interest rate cuts. But that's not necessarily a good thing, because it means we're in a very bad situation. And so could the rates come down more? Yes, absolutely, they could come down more. I think it can come down much more, like they did during the pandemic. Which then has its own sort of issues, because the economy is suffering, and it may provide people with resources the ability to start buying up houses at the very low interest rate. So I don't think we're going to see another pandemic style frenzy of buying, because I don't think it's going to be that widespread. It's only going to be those with the ability to purchase houses and the resources, like I said. So I don't expect in any scenario prices to go up too much. If cooler heads prevail and we avoid these tariffs coming in, I think we may see a modest increase in home prices throughout the year, especially if we do get a couple more interest rate cuts. That's in a best case scenario. Worst case, prices might go down, because if the economy is struggling and people are losing their jobs, and even though interest rates are coming down, then I think you'll see prices come down as well, because builders will probably, stop building houses if it's too expensive, unless they can source Canadian um, products, building materials, etc. People won't be able to afford a house, and maybe they won't even want to because they're unsure of what's going to happen week to week, month to month. So, and then that's a potentially very bad situation, right? So again, thank you to all who've joined me so far. If you have any questions, by all means, post them here. I'll answer them while I'm live, or if you're watching this on the replay, then you can still post your question. I'll try to get to it as soon as possible, because I'm sure what you're thinking, a lot of others are thinking as well. Um, so while we're on the subject of tariffs, I did get a question. I got a few questions about tariffs, but I got one interesting question that came in from an American friend, at Michael_Rocho. Thanks so much for your question. And it was a little concerning, this question, because I have to admit, the thought did cross my mind of what he's asking. And Michael's question, Michael's question is, do you think the tariffs are just the beginning and that this is a passive aggressive act of war? And Michael, like I said to you, I'd be lying if that thought didn't cross my mind. No one knows what to expect from the leader in the United States right now, because, like I said off the top, he's very unpredictable. And then he tends to double down on things when someone challenges him about it, because he doesn't want to appear weak, and he doesn't want to appear that he's lying or anything like that. So he has to then further the BS that's coming from his mouth, and this is not a political rant. I don't care what side of the political spectrum you are on. It doesn't really matter. We have to put away the blue and red sunglasses and just look at what is happening here, and how this individual reacts to things, and what he says, and what it could potentially do to our country and to Americans as well. Don't be fooled. If U.S. imposes tariffs, that's going to make it very, very expensive for Americans as well, at the pump and everywhere else. Yeah, sure, they can source their own oil, but that means they have to create more of it, right? So that means more money going into infrastructure and things like that. Who's going to pay for it, right? So it's going to trickle down to the people, guaranteed. But back to Michael's question, is this a passive aggressive act of war? It's an economic war, 100%, right? Trump has been alluding to causing economic pain, and he did use that word, pain, on Canadians, because he wants this country to become part of the United States. Whether that happens or not, whether it could happen or not, I don't know, but that's his goal, I think. He has referenced it many times. He's doubled down on it many times. And because our country is full of resources, and so he sees that, and he's greedy, and he wants to be part of the United States, and he has an ego complex. I don't think anybody can argue that, whether you like him or not. And he wants to be known for something. So maybe he wants to be known as the one who expanded the U.S. and created world domination and all kinds of nonsense, right? And we also know that he admires Vladimir Putin, and maybe he sees what Putin did in Ukraine, regardless of the reasons why Putin invaded Ukraine. Maybe he thinks, okay, maybe I can do the same to Canada and invade them. Maybe this is crazy talk. You might think I'm nuts, but if we don't talk about it, then it's not going to go away, right? That I can guarantee you. So, it's just a scary time right now as to what's happening. And, who knows? Who knows what's in store? Nobody does. Nobody does. But thank you, Michael, for the question. Like I said, it did cross my mind because, like I said, it's so unpredictable what's happening and what next week's going to hold or next month or anything like that. So crazy times that we're living in. Dystopia is a word that I used with Michael, and I think that's what we're living in right now. It's a dystopian society. It's nuts. So thank you. If anybody else has more questions, by all means, bring them on. So I think that's enough talk about tariffs and etc. So let's focus on something closer to home. The Toronto Regional Real Estate Board released their numbers for the month of January, and you'll be happy to know that they have come up from December, which is no surprise, really, because December is typically a slow month, probably the slowest month of the year. So numbers were supposed to go up, but they're coming up nicely. All across the board, I see up arrows. So that means prices have gone up a little bit, supply has gone up, and then we've got sales coming up as well. And sales have gone up, and here's the key part: sales have gone up. Sales volume has gone up more than the supply. So that means that's a healthy market, and it's tightening the months of inventory a little bit, which means that prices will start going up if this continues, right? Obviously, and the days on market is going down. That means more things are selling faster. And yeah, like I said, it's as expected. Everything started off well. I'll go into the numbers quickly here. In Toronto, for example, the 416 area, we saw a increase in listings by 11% and sales activity by 18%. In Mississauga, supply went up 8%, but demand went up 20%, which is a huge number, but keep in mind it is a small sample size, so it went up from about 288 sales to 346 sales, right? But still, it's going in the right direction. And then we have Brampton. Supply went up 11% in Brampton, while demand went up 32% in Brampton, up from 288 sales to 355 sales. Again, another small sample size. Ditto with Oakville. Actually, it's a bit of the reverse in Oakville because we saw a larger increase in supply in Oakville, up 42% from 566 listings to 804 listings. Maybe everybody was waiting until after the new year to put their house on sale in Oakville, and demand only went up about 18%. So again, this doesn't matter too much. Oakville has its own little niche there. That market is mostly large, expensive homes. So I'm not too worried about the market, things going down in Oakville. But speaking of price, like I said, prices were up across the board. In Mississauga, home prices went up about 10% month over month. In Brampton, about 4% month over month. And this is all property types, right? We're talking about detached homes, we're talking about semis, we're talking about townhomes, and we're talking about high-rise condos as well. In Toronto, however, prices came down about 5% month over month. Excuse me. As I said, Toronto, they came down about 5% month over month. But if you dig deeper into that, excuse me, you'll see that a greater percentage of high-rise condos sold in Toronto in the last month versus more expensive low-rise homes. So when a cheaper product is selling more than a more expensive product, obviously the average of all those products is going to come down. So I wouldn't be concerned too much about prices coming down in Toronto. It's simply because we have way more condos, 23% more high-rise condos sold in January over December versus only 13% more of the low-rise variety selling. So there you go. And that's that in a nutshell. If you have any questions, again, by all means, I'm going to be signing off, in the next few seconds. So feel free to post your comments below if you're still watching this, or if you're watching this on the replay. And have a great day, everybody. Enjoy the moment right now. We don't know what's around the corner. All right. Ciao.